Okay guys, so today we are ranking every single book that I read in 2024, which was my best year of reading yet. I have never read as many books as I read in 2024. For some people, it might be a small amount. I read 38 books. But for me, my goal was 15. So I was really happy about 38. But before we get into it, also, I am so proud of this right here. Hold on. Look at this. I Mod Podged this over the last few days, and I'm really happy about it. And I'm sure that there are lots of other Harry Potter lovers out there because, you know, it's Harry Potter. And so I thought I'd show that off here. My favorite sticker is this one right here that says, "You're just as sane as I am," like Luna. I love it. Anyways, so we're gonna just jump right into this. I made a fancy little tier list and everything. Let's get ready to rumble. All right, so first off, these do not seem to be in any sort of order that I had originally had them in. We're just gonna go through it in the order that it gives them to me. So the first one, Curses and Other Buried Things, I think that this was actually the last one of the year that I had finished. So we're following this girl. There is this curse on her family, and specifically the women in her family, the firstborn women. When they turn 18, they start to slowly go insane until the swamp takes them. So it's set in like Georgia swamp type of setting. It talks definitely about like generational curses, things like that. It's very kind of sci-fi. I liked most of that and was fine with how most of it was written. I will say that there is one part later on in the story that's really important to the book, like super important, that was like jarringly sci-fi, like in a way that didn't actually match with the rest of the book. So in that part, it was sort of like, I'm sorry, what? What just happened? I mean, I did like this book. It was good. Yeah. I think I'll give it was good. It was good. Curses and Other Buried Things, it was good. Next book. Guys, okay, I had never read fan fiction until this year, and I had heard so many things about this specific fan fiction that's a Dramione fan fiction. First of all, if I had ever even thought about Dramione before, it was like, ugh. I'm sorry, what? This is the guy that called her slurs, right? Like, absolutely not. And then I read this specific fan fiction. Now, I will say this one is no longer available on AO3. It's been pulled because the author is actually publishing it as a real novel. So it was previously called Manacled. Now it's going to be called Alchemized. I've already pre-ordered my copy. It doesn't come out until the end of September, and I've already pre-ordered my copy. That tells you exactly how I feel about this book. This is also, just really quickly, this is also the longest book that I've ever read before, but it didn't feel like that. I just wanted more the entire time. Okay, and while I'm reading this, right, it's Harry Potter fan fiction, so obviously part of the Harry Potter universe or whatever, it felt more real to me while I was reading it than what actually happened in canon. Okay, so it diverges from the Harry Potter universe at year 6. The events of year 6 happen differently in this book, Manacled, than what they do in the actual Harry Potter canon universe. And in it, this is not a spoiler because it tells you right at the very beginning if you happen to have a copy of this that you're going to read. So in it, Harry Potter is dead. We are in a universe where Harry Potter did not survive. So it's bleak. It is a very dark universe. And that is where our story takes place. This book had me. People are also very intense about this book. They personally bind this book to have themselves. There are illegal copies of this book, by the way, sold on Etsy and stuff. If you're watching this, please don't support those people by buying those books. They charge $80 to $100 and some dollars, and it's not even their work. They're not allowed to be selling copies of it. But I was really, really excited when the author announced that she was going to be publishing it as a standalone, so obviously not in the Harry Potter universe anymore. So that she could do that, she reworked the whole thing, and now it's going to be called Alchemized. The new cover art came out for it, and I'm really excited about it. Actually, I will show you how excited I am. You want to see what a dork I am? You want to see how ridiculous I am? Right here. Right here is my ridiculousness. That's the cover art for the new book. So it's not going to be a surprise at all then when I go ahead and drop Manacled up into the absolute favorites. I am so excited for Alchemized. It's not even funny. Okay, the next one, The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo. It was seriously so good. That was my first time ever reading anything by Leigh Bardugo. I know that a lot of people like the Shadow and Bone series, and especially the Six of Crows series, which I do now have. I recently found like a boxed set of the duology, and so I will be reading that at some point this year. I cannot wait for it because Language of Thorns was incredible. It's told very much like those old classic kind of darker fairy tales. Some of them are even twists on like fairy tales that we know. Or for example, one of them was like the further story of the Nutcracker. So you know like the classic Nutcracker story, but then it takes it further and what happens as they get a little bit older. It was all just like so incredibly written and mind-blowing. And you know how fairy tales will oftentimes have this sort of theme, this little like thread pulling it all together throughout. Leigh Bardugo definitely did that in all of these like short stories. It was absolutely incredible. I adored it the entire time. I also loved the artwork in the book because like as you were reading, the border slowly like grew. Like with each page flip, you were kind of like building the border and things were being added that went with what you were reading. It was just a lot of fun. I enjoyed it in general. So that one, do I put it in absolute favorites or do I put it in almost there? Okay, this is the part that is like stressful for me. I don't know if I actually enjoy ranking things or not. I think I am going to put it in absolute favorites because it was really fun to read. Do I feel like the same about it as I felt about Manacled? Probably not, but it was still a favorite in its own right. Okay. The next one, Practical Magic. So I read that one during the fall. It follows two sisters. One of them also has two daughters, and the original two sisters, they were raised by two aunts as well. And so we see a lot of like sisterhood throughout it, and the differences between the sisters and kind of how this witchiness plays out in their family, how it's alienated some of them, makes them not really want to be a part of everything. We also follow kind of different love interests and what happens with them in their stories. I really liked this one. It was perfect for the fall. I definitely wouldn't call it like a favorite or even an almost there. I do think that it was better for me than Curses and Other Buried Things, so I'm gonna give it a love. Next up, this is in weird order because I don't like that Catching Fire is all the way over here, so I'm actually gonna do Hunger Games next. So I had seen all of the Hunger Games movies, but this was my first time actually reading the Hunger Games books. And so I was so happy to actually get to be inside of Katniss's head. I think I said in a different video, I don't always love Jennifer Lawrence, but after reading the books, I think that she actually did play Katniss well. She's very much like Katniss Everdeen. So I do think that she did a really good job with her. Overall, I just really enjoyed it. If you have been living under a rock and you don't know anything whatsoever about the Hunger Games, it is set in a dystopian society in which there is a capital that rules over 12 districts. And every year from these districts, there is a reaping where a female and a male child are taken from each of the districts and they have to compete in the Hunger Games, and only one can be the winner. After that, they get to be a victor and live lives of wealth and comfort, but the rest are all killed during these games in an arena that is designed to make them fight one another, fight against the elements. It's very brutal. And then in the districts, there's also a lot going on when it comes to poverty and injustice. For the districts that are kind of closer to the capital, there is less of that that's felt, but especially for those districts that are far away from the capital, there is a lot of hunger and a lot of poverty. So Katniss is actually from District 12, which is very very far from the capital, considering there are 12 districts at the time. So we get to see her story throughout this series. I absolutely loved Hunger Games. The question is, I think that especially with the first one, I would go ahead and put it up in absolute favorites. Catching Fire is great. I'm not going to give any spoilers just in case you haven't read them, haven't seen the movies. Catching Fire was also great. Obviously, it's going to feel different than the first one. There's something about like when you're first introduced to a world and you get to watch that first bit of like character arc that's happening that I don't know if quite the same level of magic continued. Not saying that there's magic in the book, literary magic. I'm not quite sure that it was the same exactly for me in Catching Fire. So I would probably say that Catching Fire was almost there. Like I still really, really loved it, but I wouldn't put it up there with like Manacled and Language of Thorns and Hunger Games itself. So we'll leave that at that. Okay, next up is Black by Ted Dekker. It was my first time reading a Ted Dekker novel. I know that lots of people absolutely love his work, and I really enjoyed this one. It was a lot different than what I thought it was going to be, and he is a better writer than what I kind of expected, I guess. Even though a lot of people recommended him, I didn't necessarily have like super high expectations going in or anything for what it was going to be, but I really enjoyed it. I would put his in the love category. Next up was Beach Read, which is the first Emily Henry book that I've ever read and the only one so far that I've ever read. I do have another of hers upstairs in my collection that I actually just recently got on a trip to Columbus. So I'm really excited to read that. I really enjoyed Beach Read. If you're someone who doesn't like the more spicy scenes, there were definitely a few of those, which I wasn't necessarily thinking that there would be, just because there were times throughout the story where it was like definitely like building, but then it was like, okay, it's not gonna actually like show it, which I almost preferred. Like I almost liked it better that way, but then it definitely happens. I hadn't heard anybody talk about the fact that there was spice in the books before, so I had no idea, but there is spice in Beach Read at least. I don't know about the rest of them, probably, if she's someone who includes that sort of thing. So if it bothers you, then that would be one to avoid. But honestly, it was really well done. I love the way that she like set up their chemistry in it. It was very believable. You know, some books really try hard on the whole romance thing and just like don't actually quite get there, but this one, it felt like they were real people. I definitely believed it. So I would say for Beach Read that I love it. Next one, Bridgerton, The Duke and I. So this was another one that of course has a little bit of spice in it. It's not as much as what I thought it was going to be considering the television show. The main thing that I really loved about this was just the chemistry between characters in general. Not even just like the main two love interests. Like, yes, there was chemistry there, but I also like really loved the mother-daughter relationship and how that was portrayed. Like just the dialogue in general of this book was really, really good. I did actually recently get the next book in the series, The Viscount Who Loved Me, so I'm looking forward to reading that one as well. I would also, I think, put this one in the love category. Next up, we have The Little Mermaid, of course, an utter classic by Hans Christian Andersen. It was a very short read, you know, just read it in an evening really quickly, kind of after tucking the kids into bed, just because I, you know, wanted to read it. I'd never actually read that fairy tale before, and so I decided to go for it. There were a lot of things in there that I didn't actually anticipate, a lot of things that struck me much more than I would have thought, that were very different from the way that the movie portrayed The Little Mermaid, which of course Disney's going to do that. They take their liberties and that sort of thing to kind of do what they want with the story. But I actually preferred the original more, even though the ending is not necessarily the ending that you're wanting. I know that lots of people talk about the ending of The Little Mermaid and that, you know, she becomes sea foam and all this stuff, and it seems very depressing. But I think that it's important to remember that fairy tales are supposed to teach us things, and sometimes the way that fairy tales are now kind of like more modernized, it's fairy tale means that you get what you want. And in the original fairy tales, it wasn't always that. It was that you got what you needed, and that whoever was reading it got to learn something based on what the main character went through. So first of all, in the book version, she is not nearly as petulant as young redheaded Ariel in the Disney version. She's a little bit more somber, at least that's how I read her. Even though she is kind of doing all these things in order to be a human, it's not solely based on the prince. A lot of it is based on the prince, but it's not solely that. But then we also see kind of like the pitfalls of just going ahead and plowing through with something that might not exactly be wise. We learn something about contentment as we go through the story, and we also learn about goodness. Ultimately, her heart was good, and it's not just that she becomes sea foam in the end. So I really enjoyed reading The Little Mermaid, especially, you know, with getting to compare it to the movie version, and I just felt like the book was a little more fitting. Everything just felt a little nicer. So anyways, for The Little Mermaid, oh man, I don't know what I want to give it. I will give it, and it was good. Yeah, it was good. I really liked it. Okay, next up, Wicked. So I think my first video that I ever did on this channel was on Wicked, and that's a really hard book. That's a really hard book to just like start with right out the gate. I was not prepared for what I was about to read. And the thing is, it was very like a lot of mixed emotions, because there were certain aspects of the book that I was like, oh my goodness, I adore this. Like, I love how this is being talked about in this way and shown this way in this story, and the character development that was happening. Yeah. So there were certain parts of it that I absolutely loved. And then there was a lot of other stuff thrown in that just felt unnecessary. And like I said in the video, there's a lot of things in there that like make you feel uncomfortable as you're reading them, and like maybe that's the point, but on another level, it just felt like, why do we need to mention this certain thing? Why are we talking about this? So Wicked was really a mixed bag for me. Like, the highs were really high and the lows were like, what am I reading, and should I actually continue to still read this? I did. I trudged through it because at that point I wasn't really somebody who DNF'd anything. I have DNF'd some things now, but at that point I wasn't a DNFer, so I kind of chugged right along. At that point also, I hadn't seen the musical yet. I had heard all of the music for it, but I hadn't actually seen the musical yet, and now I have. I went and saw it in theaters, and I absolutely adore the musical and everything that they did in it, and the way that they changed certain things and took out all of those parts, because there's really no trace of any of the stuff that makes you uncomfortable in the musical, which just goes to show that you can still tell a good story without any of that in there. Anyways, there were certain things that were left out of the musical that were part of the book that I did enjoy, and that I felt like were important and added kind of like a layer of depth there, that obviously that's not what the musical is going for, and that's totally fine. It's its own thing, and I absolutely loved it. But there was kind of like this depth in the book that obviously you don't hit with the musical, but it still could have been done without some of like the exploitation elements. So for this one, I'm gonna give it a meh, because it was a mixed bag. The next one, The Blue Castle. This is like the coziest read ever. I was not expecting it when I picked it up. It was just like a random book in a warehouse sale at our local used bookstore, and I saw that it was by L.M. Montgomery, the same person who wrote Anne of Green Gables, and so I was like, yeah, I will absolutely give this a try. I love Anne of Green Gables, and The Blue Castle did not disappoint. Very cozy read. Our main character has not had much of a life. She has been very stifled by her family and held back in many ways, and now she is at the age where she is becoming a spinster, and she hasn't dreamt. Like she doesn't have any aspirations. There is nothing except for just the day that is in front of her. So that is where we meet her, and we get to kind of watch her life as it unfolds. I really, really loved The Blue Castle, even though it wasn't like high action, there was nothing crazy in it. It is an absolute favorite. Next up, we have Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. Now, I am a classics girly. I absolutely love Jane Austen novels. Okay, I have to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that I love Jane Austen novels. Sense and Sensibility was not it for me. It took me a really long time to get through the book. Eleanor reminded me very much of sort of kind of like an Anne Elliot type of character, or maybe sort of like a Fanny Price, kind of a mix between them, but more dull. Eleanor's character was just really dull for me. And Marianne, I know that we have to show character growth. I get it. I really do. Marianne was infuriating for me in so many parts of the novel until like the end of the book. So she's just infuriating, and then finally we have something here, which I get. Lots of young women are just like Marianne, but I didn't really connect with either one of them, and so it was a book that just like, it took me a long time. Even though it's not that long of a book, it took me forever to read it. It was my least favorite Jane Austen novel. In the end, I think I gave it like a 4, but I feel like I was just giving it a 4 because it's Jane Austen, and I just honestly, I don't really like it, so I'm just gonna give it a meh. Like, it's not like a terrible book or anything, but it's not one that I would choose to read again ever. Okay, the next one on the list here is Monster by Frank Peretti. This was my first time reading Frank Peretti, and I had no idea what Monster was going to be about. So you're following this couple as they are about to take a camping trip. The wife in the relationship does not do things like this. She is not looking forward to it because it's not just a regular camping trip. Like, they're going to be taking a survival class. She is completely out of her element. But she's doing this because her husband is trying to push her to like get out of her comfort zone a little more. She kind of likes to hermit a bit. She doesn't always like to necessarily be around people, and they're doing this with their friends. So another couple is going with them, and they're all doing this together. So it's something that makes her super uncomfortable, but she's going to do it anyway. She loves her husband, and so she's doing this. Then while they're there, this happens very early in the story, so I'm not really giving much away. So they go there, and their guide is not where he's supposed to be. The other couple has not arrived yet. They are the first ones there. And something is obviously wrong. So they decide to stay the night in the woods near where they were supposed to meet this guide, and they end up getting separated. And that's really where the story takes off. It was super interesting. It was one that was definitely easy to read and engaging. It was one that kept me hooked. I wanted to keep reading. It was definitely an enjoyable one. So I'm gonna call this one, I can't decide if it's it was good or if it's love. Oh man, because no, it was better than the ones that I have, and it was good. So I'm gonna call it love. I'm gonna call it love. Yeah. Next up, we've got some Harry Potter books to do here, but I don't want to start with Deathly Hallows. The first one of the year that I had read, because not last year, 2023, I had read the first and second one, again, for the first time since I was like young. So I started off in 2024 with the third one, Prisoner of Azkaban. And of course I love it. Now that's also where the story kind of starts to diverge just like a little bit more from what you see in the movies. And so I found myself getting so frustrated, not with the book, but with the movies, like, what in the heck? Why did you leave this certain part out? And I had no idea that it was just going to get worse from there. With each book, I would be progressively more angry. The third one, I really like the third one. I do. I don't know if I would call it a favorite, but it's kind of like Catching Fire for me. Like, it doesn't capture the feelings necessarily that I want it to capture. You do start to kind of unravel a little bit more of the past with Prisoner of Azkaban, which I did enjoy, but I'm not gonna list it with absolute favorites. It's gonna go in an almost there for me. Okay, so the next one, we'll just go ahead and talk about the next Harry Potter book. So Goblet of Fire was insanely different from the movie. I was like, what in the world? But it also was the one that like dragged the most. So in the movies when I was younger, Goblet of Fire was like my favorite. I think it was the swishy hair. But in the book, it takes forever, obviously, just to get to Hogwarts because you have this whole thing with the Quidditch World Cup first. And so it feels like a really, really long book. Like you're reading it and it's like, I'm still gonna have to go through the Triwizard Tournament and everything. Like I'm never gonna finish this book. This one is where my son got stuck. He read the fourth one and he's like, I'm done with Harry Potter for a while, and he hasn't picked them back up again since. I'm like, oh no, the Goblet of Fire ruined it. But yeah, it's one that it just drags. So I do still love it. That is important to say. I do still love it. But yeah, I'm gonna put it in love instead of almost there or an absolute favorite. So after that, of course, we have Order of the Phoenix. Action-packed, so much stuff going on, so mad at Creature, all sorts of things. Everything obviously getting much darker in this one. Of course, each one gets a little bit progressively more. Like, it's like, oh, I'm sort of vanquishing the bad guy, but it's really just revealing that there's this other layer that I don't quite understand. Of course, Order of the Phoenix, it gets much darker, but you also start to kind of understand a little bit more of what's going on. Like I said, major frustration with Creature in that one, but overall, like, it is really close to being a favorite for me. So it gets to be with Prisoner of Azkaban and Almost There. All right, next up of the Harry Potters is Half-Blood Prince. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you right now that it is an absolute favorite. Honestly, I think that Half-Blood Prince is probably my favorite of the series. Of course, I love the first one because it's just like nostalgia and you're getting introduced to the world and Harry is figuring out that he's a wizard and just like learning like the basic things about his parents. And so it's like that like warmth in the first one that I really, really love. You know, you're getting introduced to Hogwarts. You're just like forming all these like bonds in the first one. So it's definitely on the absolute favorite list. But Half-Blood Prince, I won't say any spoilers just in case that there's anybody out there listening to it, but just like the amount of wisdom that you get from Dumbledore in this one just like, it feels like growing up. And you see that in Harry too. Obviously, after some of the events in Order of the Phoenix, like there's going to be some growing up that happens. Even in Goblet of Fire, like there's growth, and then Order of the Phoenix, there's growth after certain events. But there's something about the sixth one because of everything that's come before it, and then because of all this wisdom that Dumbledore is imparting, that it just like, it feels like growing up. And there are so many different parts that I like underlined and highlighted, like that Dumbledore said, and I don't know. I absolutely adore Half-Blood Prince. You learn so much more too in Half-Blood Prince. It's like all of the things before that you were like, we're missing something. Like we don't quite know everything that's going on yet. In Half-Blood Prince, a lot of it kind of like clicks into place. So I really love that about it. And then that brings us to Deathly Hallows, which I love a good wrap up. So it is another one that is an absolute favorite. It's absolutely brutal, but also really incredible. So that one has to be an absolute favorite. All right, next up on the list was the other Jane Austen novel that I read last year, Northanger Abbey. Oh my goodness. Jane was on one in that one. Like, she was peak sassiness in that one. So witty, so funny. I absolutely adored it. I don't know if I should put it in an absolute favorite. I really, really adored it, and it's one of my favorites of hers probably, but I think I'm gonna call it an almost there, just because yes, it's incredible, but there's just something kind of like special for me about all of the ones that I have an absolute favorite that it doesn't quite hit, but at the same time, I absolutely loved Northanger Abbey. The way that her characters are like commentary on like different types of people in society at the time always gets me. And this one, it just does that incredibly. So I really liked that one. Okay, next up is The Waking Land, which I also did a video on this one. And if you watch it, you will see that Alana Valtai and I don't like her. And she's the main character of the book, so that's kind of a problem. I didn't mind most of the book. I actually really liked the magic system in it. It was like just very like earthy, and like she could taste the earth as like the magic started to like course through her. Everything is very much like tied to the land. Like I really liked that aspect of it and I found it very interesting. I just couldn't stand her as a person. I think that she was petulant and whiny and very flip-floppy. Like one minute she was feeling terrible about the fact that she had been petulant and whiny because it costed people things, and then 2 seconds later she was ready to do it again. Like you're learning nothing. I did not like her. There was also one spicy scene that it felt like it was just thrown in there to be a spicy scene just because they needed one almost. I don't know. I wanted to like it, like I really did, but at the end of the day I just didn't. And honestly, I'm gonna give it just a no. Just no. Okay, next up on the list was one that I read pretty early in the year called None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I know that a lot of people like her. A lot of people liked that book. So we have kind of two main female characters that we're following and we get to kind of be inside of their head. And then we also have like these little snippets from like a Netflix documentary that's happening about these two people later on after the story has happened. So I like the format. That was kind of cool. And you never really know whether you can or can't trust one of our narrators here. Even like by the end, I kind of found myself questioning like her version of events versus other people's version of events, and kind of like, is it just that she sees things this way, or like did some of this really happen, or is it that none of this is true? So yeah, it was all very interesting for me. It was a fun one. I definitely wouldn't call it like a favorite or anything like that, but I would say it was good. Next was the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, another classic here. So we're following Screwtape, who is a demon who is kind of going through, I don't know if you would call it that he's going through training or that he's just started this job, I guess, with being the demon following this particular person and trying to derail his life and get him to not follow God. So it was just, it was really good read. Of course, it's fiction, but at the same time, it is one that you can apply to your own spiritual life and kind of sense when these sort of negative things are coming in instead of focusing on your faith and things like that. Just different things that might pull you away or distract you or make you apathetic, different things like that. So anyways, I loved this one. It was great. Okay, so next up on the list is the Southern Book Club's Guide for Slaying Vampires. So this one was very good. I feel like I read Dracula too close though after reading this one. It has moments where it's like super funny and engaging, and then it has other moments where it's like kind of gory. I love the setting. We're basically following them, I think, for like a decade. It's been a little while since I read it now, but we're following these main characters for like a decade and seeing kind of what happens in their very safe little town after this certain person moves to town. I think it was really well done. It was very engaging. It did not take long for me to read at all because it definitely kept me hooked. So I really liked this one. I definitely wouldn't call it like an almost there even, but I would definitely say that I loved it. Okay, next up is Dracula. Again, I read this pretty close after finishing the previous one, and that was just a lot of vampire action back to back, and I'm a person who is very squeamish about blood, so maybe all the vampire books in one sitting wasn't the greatest for me, especially for some reason. I think that I mentioned this before, but like he would talk about her puncture holes being ragged. The thought of like just like re-entry in the same place over and over again and like the ragged flesh around, no. I really liked the format of it. I liked that it was told diary style and that we're getting multiple different points of view. I like how much mystery there was surrounding the character of the Count. It was just really well done. Of course, it's a classic. One of our really good friends, it's his absolute favorite. So it was nice to get to experience a favorite of someone else. I really liked Mina's character. Yeah, there was a lot to like about it, but it also made me feel very grossed out. I think that I don't know if I want to do it was good or if I want to do love. I feel like it was above the ones that I have in It Was Good, definitely, but I almost like don't feel the same about it as some of the ones in the love category, but I'll go ahead and give it love because it was definitely above those other ones. Okay, so next up it is It's Not Summer Without You, which is part of the Summer I Turned Pretty series. So my husband and I started watching the show together on Amazon Prime, and of course when we discovered that they were actually books first, I had to read them because I love books. So I think that this was the first one that I actually finished in 2024. It took me like 2 days to read or something like that. It was like while we were still doing Christmas break, so I wasn't homeschooling the kids or anything like that. Like I just had lots of time and I just sat on the couch and read like all day. So anyways, I really liked both of these that are up next here. It's Not Summer Without You and We'll Always Have Summer. We'll Always Have Summer was almost triggering for me in some ways, which I know sounds ridiculous because it's a YA novel, but like certain life events in Belly's life that were happening were things that I've been through, and I was just like screaming the whole time like, Belly, don't do it, Belly, don't do it, Belly, don't do it. It was actually really rough for me to read, I'm not gonna lie to you, but I did overall enjoy them. The Summer I Turned Pretty is definitely a lot different than what the show on Amazon makes it into. Like they still obviously have the same type of dynamic with like Belly and Jeremiah and Conrad, but other than that, like there's a lot that was changed. It's Not Summer Without You focuses on a little bit harder topics than what you get in The Summer I Turned Pretty. Like The Summer I Turned Pretty is very much like the fun side of everything, and then it gets much more serious in It's Not Summer Without You. But I actually liked that about it. So for It's Not Summer Without You, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a love. Since We'll Always Have Summer was really hard for me, I'm gonna go ahead and give it an It Was Good. I was ultimately happy with the way everything turned out, but going through it, it was tough for me to read. It was still good, but I don't think that I could give it a love. Okay, the next one on the list was The Abolition of Man. Another C.S. Lewis one. This one is like super skinny, but also really dense. So I took my time going through it. I didn't just like rush, because it was one of those things where it's like, if you kind of like zone out for a minute and you miss a few sentences, like suddenly you've lost his train of thought and you don't know what he's meaning anymore. So it was one of those that like you really have to be focused in the whole time. I also did like a ton of highlights and underlines. I think on like almost every page there was something that I was like, ooh, that really hits, like that's really good. So anyways, The Abolition of Man was great. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a love. Next up on there is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. It was my first time reading an Agatha Christie novel. Really, I haven't read a ton of mysteries, so anyways, I really enjoyed this one. Toward the beginning, I was like, oh, this is so predictable, like it's gonna be so easy. But then you realize actually that it's not, after you keep reading and, you know, you're trying to figure out who exactly is doing this and how it would make sense. And like every time I was like, ooh, actually, okay, I think it's this one. At one point I had picked out the right one, and then I was like, no, actually it can't be that person. Maybe it's this one over here. Like it just really kept me guessing. So I thought that that one was a lot of fun. I'm gonna give it an It Was Good. Next one, The Priory of the Orange Tree. Okay, so it's the one that I finished right before Curses and Other Buried Things. First of all, with this one, you don't just have one map in the front, you have several. And then in the back, you have like a whole index of characters, because I mean, you get introduced to a lot of people in this novel. So you have a whole index of characters, and also not just the ones that are living and are like in the story right now, but also the historical ones, because you're going to need to know those. Also, you have like a little glossary of certain words that might not be words in like that we would use, but certain things that they have there, and you need to be able to know what they mean when they're talking about them. So those are back there too. Like there's just like a whole little like thick section in the back dedicated specifically to making sure that you understand all the terms in there. This one was thick, and not just because of the index. Like the story itself was massive. It's broken up into like 6 different parts, I think, and it's sort of like Game of Thrones-esque in that like it kind of jumps around. Like you're following different people in different parts of the world, and then you're seeing how their stories kind of play off one another or how they intertwine. It was really, really masterfully written. I will say that there was one aspect that I was not expecting in there, like at all, and only like kind of one thing that I didn't necessarily love, but at the same time, it didn't detract at all from the story for me. As far as spice, there is a little bit of that. It's done in such a way where it was like, is this about to go too far? Like, should I just like skip the page? But like, no, it actually doesn't. I don't like stuff that's like raunchy, you know what I mean? I don't really like that at all, but it wasn't portrayed like that. So anyways, I was still able to like read it, and overall just like the story was woven together so well, and I liked several of the characters. The other thing, since there's multiple points of view, it's like you don't necessarily ever feel like anyone's truly safe. It's like any of these people could die because we have so many different narrators that if their story is cut off, that's going to be okay. So then it's like anytime that you're attached to someone, you don't really know if they're going to make it, because I mean, there is a lot going on in the story too. A lot of high adventure type of things happening. So if you don't know anything about it, this is set in a world that is very divided, east and west. It draws a lot off of both Chinese folklore, and also there's like a lot of things that feel kind of like Catholicism in there. So anyways, the East very much has sort of like the Chinese folklore, and the West is dominated by this sort of Catholicism type of system. She makes it very clear that like she's not just full out basing the story on either of those things. However, there are definitely elements of those in there. And there has been this great dragon who wanted to enslave the whole earth. Something about him also causes a sickness in people, and so people from one certain nation kind of deal with that more because his influence is still over a good bit of that region. So we see how some of that plays out. And there's also like a lot of politics and religion, stuff like that involved in that, which is another reason why I say it feels very kind of like Game of Thrones-esque. I really loved how all of it ended up playing out, different stories of like redemption that we have, things like that. So anyway, this one was excellent, and I include it in absolute favorites. Yes. Next on here we have Little House on the Prairie. So this is one that I finished with one of my daughters. It was one that she was reading in school last year, and of course we loved that one together. I will put it in, it was good or love. It was good or love. I'll put it in love. It was fun. Okay, the next one is Instructions for Dancing. So people say that they really like one of Nicola Yoon's books. I don't remember which one it was. It's definitely not this one. This one felt to me like it was written by a middle schooler. I felt very just like bored with it. The ending was not fun, which is sad because when I started reading it, it was like, ooh, it kind of has this like magical element to it. What's going on? I wasn't expecting this. And just by the end, I just didn't like it. It wasn't a hard read. I was still able to get through it like fairly quickly, but at the same time, it was just boring and sort of predictable, and the chemistry between them felt like very false, like very much like this is written on a page. These are two-dimensional characters. Like even though they both had struggles in their lives, like they didn't actually come to life whatsoever. It didn't feel real to me. And so this might seem harsh, but it was a waste of paper. That story was just unnecessary, and I was honestly sad that I even kept reading it. I should have just DNF'd it because it wasn't good. I'm sure that she's a fine author, but that one wasn't it. Okay, next up is The Picture of Dorian Gray, another absolute classic. Oh my goodness, I love the way that man wrote. It could be like very kind of flowery feeling, very, very poetic. And I love his poetry. I'd read a good bit of his poetry before, but this is my first time actually like fully reading The Picture of Dorian Gray. I feel like we had maybe an excerpt of it or an abridged version that we read like back in school or something, but definitely not like the real deal. So it was a treat for me. I think I read this like at the beginning of the fall, which it was a good one to be a fall read. I enjoyed watching Dorian's character, not in the way that like obviously it was great or anything, but as a sort of like character study. Also the people around him felt very real. So in contrast to the last one that I was just talking about, that just felt like child's play and it was just ridiculous, this one was very, very good. Like all of the characters were very much alive. So yeah, I really liked this one. I am gonna put it in the love category for sure. I have a lot of loves that I read last year. I always felt like maybe I was kind of rating things too high with my star rating, but honestly, I just read a lot of really good books. So, okay, next one, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, which I think that there's more, right? I think it's like a whole series, but I've just read the first one so far. I did really like that one. I like Jenny Han's writing anyways. Like I said, I did enjoy the Summer I Turned Pretty series, so it was fun to kind of revisit her writing. I like her style of YA. It doesn't feel like incredibly childish. Like it feels okay that I'm an adult who's reading this YA novel right now. Anyways, I really liked To All the Boys I've Loved Before. It's been made into like a movie series, and then there's like a spin-off series from it that follows her sister too, which that's not like an actual book or anything. I don't think so. But yeah, that one was a lot of fun. I struggle with the it was good or love. I really probably should have done like a category in the middle of those, because like I did love that one and it was more than it was good, but it was not quite like Dorian Gray either. Like I really should have had I should have thought that out better. Another category in between those two. Okay, next one was Liar's Beach. So if you're thinking about reading this one, first of all, it's a mystery. You are following this guy who goes to private school, but he's not actually like a rich person. He is actually fairly poor, but is able to go to this private school. And so he is friends with this certain group of people, and they invite him to come to their beach house for like a week or two in the summer. And so he goes, and all sorts of things ensue from that. So someone gets hurt and is found in the pool very early on in the book, and you're kind of trying to figure out what has happened, who could have possibly done it. So it's him and one of his childhood best friends, who's a girl named Holiday, and they're trying to figure it out. I really liked Holiday's character. She was fun. The main character was fine, I guess. There is like a lot of language in this book. There's also kind of a lot of twists and turns, like you're thinking it might be this person, but then it's actually not. I did enjoy it overall as I was reading it. It was fun. Do I think it would be like stellar for people who are super into mysteries? Probably not. Like if you actually are really into mysteries, you probably wouldn't like it. But like I said, I don't normally read mysteries, so for me it was fun. So I will give it, and it was good. Next one was Burying the Moon. This one was really, really good, and I actually ended up reading it with my kids. It is like a children's book. The entire thing is told in poetry, and it follows Latika, who is a young girl in an Indian village that does not have running water, and just kind of what that looks like in their life, that they don't have plumbing, that they have to go to this field of shame when they need to use the restroom. And it just brought up a lot of good things, a lot of good talking points for the kids and I. When I was reading it by myself, like in bed, it was in the middle of the night and I couldn't sleep, so I was reading it in bed like crying, because even though this particular story isn't like true, at the same time it is true for lots of people out there. And it's hard to think about, like when we're in our nice warm homes and have always had plumbing and have always had running water, and who have never had to think about the same things that other people in the world have to think about. So I of course love books like that as a homeschooling mom, being able to get different perspectives for my children to see just how much privilege that we truly have, and to be mindful of other people in the world, and to start growing their compassion at a young age. So we really, really enjoyed Burying the Moon, and I will most definitely put that one in love. Okay, and then last but not least, we have I, Eliza Hamilton. Of course, I loved the musical Hamilton, and I adore Eliza as a historical figure, and so I wanted to read more about her. Now, this is like a historical fiction. I will say that the author did a really, really great job. The only things it feels like that were fiction were those things that like we couldn't know, like dialogue between characters and certain things like that. But anytime that there was something in there and I'm like, oh, did that really happen? And I would like look it up, and it actually did. Because, you know, not everything obviously in Hamilton the musical happened actually that way. Like there's a lot of creative liberty taken taken, which is fine. I don't have any problem with that. But it was nice to like read this story and to realize that there weren't like a ton of creative liberties taken. Like the big things in there were how things really played out, and she's just kind of filling in the blanks of what we don't know. So I really enjoyed I, Eliza Hamilton. Oh, again, it's that between it was good and love that it just feels unfair that I did not put another category between them. Maybe I'll do better next year. But anyways, those were all of the books that I read in 2024. I'm really looking forward to all the ones that I'm gonna read in 2025. Of course, I've already started. I have finished some of them and it is going swimmingly so far. Like the next ranking, I don't even know what I'm gonna do for it because my plan is to just try to read incredible books all year long. And so far that is definitely happening. I'm really excited about all the ones that I've read. All right, but thanks for watching and I'll catch you next time. Bye.